hadn't really followed baseball in a long time. Like, I used to watch it back in the 90s during the steroids era with Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, Barry Bonds, and those guys. Ken Griffey Jr., but of course he never was linked to PEDs, but that's when I used to watch it. Frank Thomas, the Big Hurt, all those guys were playing. But I've been aware of the Cubs. I've been aware that they were really good this year. But with their history, man, you just always kind of skeptical, man. So when they won the World Series against the Indians, another team that is very familiar with heartbreak, and you just know that there's one of these teams is bound for a letdown. And I was rooting for the Cubs though, because they've had the longest drought. They've had a lot of bad. I mean, even though the Indians haven't won a World Series since 1948, and they now have the longest streak now without winning a World Series, they have been in the World Series a couple times the past two decades. The Cubs, I'm thinking now about all the players that played with them, the great players that have now passed. Ron Santo a couple years ago. Ernie Banks, I think it was last year that Ernie Banks died. Ferguson Jenkins, Ryan Sandberg, all these players who played with the Cubs organization, Billy Williams, but never were able to even get to the World Series, let alone win it. They haven't been to the World Series since 1945, which is 3 years before the Indians won the World Series. But the Cubs have been in the World Series before this year, since 1945. Just a mere months after we sent the Enola Gay to drop the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's the last time they had went. Supposedly that's when the curse was put upon them, the Billy Goat curse. They hadn't won it all since 1908. The last time they won the World Series was when we were in the midst of the 1908 presidential campaign between William Howard Taft and William Jennings Bryan. Both men have been dead for over 80 years. But the Cubs did it. It was scary. It was shaky for a little while. They had a 6-2 lead at one point. They had a 6-3 lead when what was his name? Aroldis Chapman sort of got a little shaky. But they were able to, and the game was tied at 6, and it looked like once again the Cubs would kind of choke. People remember the Cubs choking back in, 2003, the Bartman game, and then the next game after Game 7, the Cubs blew a lead. And then 1984, the NLCS against the Padres, I think it was, the Cubs choked, blowing a lead. So, I mean, so many things have happened since the last time the Cubs have won the World Series. So many different things have happened when you think of history. I mean, we entered World War II, we had the Bolshevik Revolution, the Roaring '20s, the economic depression, FDR, Adolf Hitler, the rise of Nazi Germany, World War II, the rise of communism, the Cold War, Eisenhower, Kennedy, the Cuban Missile Crisis. I mean, it's just, you can just go on and on and on and on. The Watergate, the turbulent 60s, the disco era. I mean, you just, Reagan. I'm going to stop. I can just keep going on and on. I mean, it's just crazy how much has happened since 1908. But finally, in 2016, 108 years after the Cubs last won a World Series, they do it. They win. And there was a rain delay, I think, toward the top of the 10th inning. Um, and it was in dramatic fashion. Uh, you know, they sort of looked a little shaky. Things looked a little shaky there at the bottom of the 10th, but they were able to hold on, and they won 8-7. And I'm aware that Chicago is sort of split. There's the north side and the south side. There's a certain section that votes for the White Sox, more or less, and there's a section that votes roots for the Cubs. But I think at least all of Chicago can appreciate the fact that the Cubs were able to end this thing. The White Sox won the World Series. Might have been back in 2008 or so, something like that. I can't remember what exact year it was. Or it might have been 2005. It was a while back. But the Cubs finally won. Now for the Cleveland, this was heartbreaking. I know. The inverse of what happened to their sister team, the Cavaliers, occurred. The Indians were up 3-1. People were questioning whether the Cubs were too young, too inexperienced. They had a commanding 3-1 lead, and they let it slip away. And I guess you can always say there's always next year, but the way these things are played now, the way that I look at baseball and I see the parity that is there, may not be a next year. Baseball and the NFL have one thing going for them, is that there's a lot of parity, probably even more so in baseball. I mean, it's literally any team can win a World Series. All it takes is a hot stretch, a couple of hot players, a good pitching staff, a couple of guys, some guys, a team gelling and going all the way. And the Cubs, who had the best record in baseball, probably throughout all, if not the entire season, were able to do something that very memorable. I just wish Ernie Banks was here to see this, but congratulations to the Chicago Cubs for winning the World Series, 8-7.